This show is sponsored by Den10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den10, you're giving back on a global scale. Hello, all my entrepreneurs and business leaders, and welcome to the Michael Esposito Show, where I interview titans of industry in order to inform, educate, and inspire you to be great. My guest today helps entrepreneurs to reach their next level of success. With decades of experience working with people from all walks of life to overcome their fear of public speaking, she is now helping entrepreneurs to put their businesses into the spotlight. She teaches new AI technology to help her clients bridge the gap between overwhelm and accomplishments. She is a beautiful storyteller, singer, songwriter, and dynamic speaker who uses her experience as an actress to convey a topic to the audience in a fun and entertaining way. With her inspirational stories and original music, she teaches others how to take charge of their lives. She's also an author and has a book coming out. We'll speak more about that on the podcast. Please welcome Sabine to the show. Welcome to the show, Sabine.
Thank you, Michael. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation with you.
Oh, my goodness. So first, I just need to get to your last name because I was not going to attempt that after my third try of introducing you. Please share your full name with us.
Just sneeze. Kvenberg.
Kvenberg. Oh, okay. Good.
Yes.
Not just these.
Yes.
Kvenberg. Yeah. When reading your bio, it's incredible for me because I'm like, this is us. Like we spoke on the phone earlier, and I just said, I know we're going to have an amazing conversation because we have so much in common, from the public speaking, the acting, and of course Toastmasters. You're a DTM, and I'm a Toastmaster now, a long time, for about 7 years, 8 years now. It's changed my life. And then the way that you bring acting into your public speaking is something I speak about in my personal story when I'm giving trainings on public speaking. So I would love to hear your take on it all. Now, if people go to your website, they'll see some pretty cool pictures of you in your youth, glowing with a guitar in front of you and singing. So I would love if perhaps you could take us back to those memories and those stories of when you were singing and how you came up in the world of public speaking and getting in front of people.
It's a loaded question. Well, it all began when I really discovered that I was unhappy with the traditional ways. And that was, of course, when I was a youngster, I was listening to the well-meant advice of my dad, who said, Sabine, find a job with benefits and a good salary so you can pay your bills and have something left over to pursue your hobbies. And by that, he meant my singing and acting. And I did. And believe it or not, I went the business route, and I ended up working as a claim adjuster for an insurance company. And knowing me now a little bit, this was not me. I was totally unhappy. And one of those times, and this is one of the things I discovered throughout my life, actually, when you find yourself in a situation where you're absolutely unhappy, your soul starts to talk to you. And so it was one day I was staring out of the window, unhappy, and I was thinking, this cannot be it. What is mine to do? Ask and ye shall receive, right? That same week, I had a chance meeting. I bumped into my former drama and music teacher on my way home, and we had a very loose conversation. And then he asked me, Sabine, are you still active with your singing group, with your duo, with your acting? And then my answer was no. And Michael, he said one thing very nonchalant that literally changed my life. He said, what a shame, Sabine. You are so talented. And somebody else has to tell you that sometimes, right? So I thought he was right. I went home. I open up the yellow pages. And yes, it dates me a little bit. Back in those days, we had to do that. And looked for acting schools. I scheduled an audition, had no idea how, but I did it anyways. Had no idea how to audition, but I did it anyways. I got in, and the rest is history. That's how I literally started my career as an actress and musical theater performer.
I'd like to ask you the question about talent, and because that's your kind of your springboard, that being the actress and musical performer. When he said you're so talented, I'd like you to define talented in your eyes. And the reason why I asked this question is because we have many gifts. We're all gifted at something. But for this teacher to say that to you of like, what a shame you're so talented. What does that mean to you? And how do you define talent?
I'm so glad that you asked that question, because most people have never asked me that question. So I'm glad, because we all have talent, as you said, but talent is not everything, which I later discovered, which actually led me to write my first book, Secrets on How to Succeed in Showbiz. So going back to what my teacher meant, I think he saw me. He saw that vibrant girl that I always was, and always full out and being there, not asking any questions. And of course, he knew me, how I was singing and performing. That is talent. And the next step, what I shared with you, I had no idea how to get started. But one thing that I had was the passion and the drive to figure it out. And that brings me back to talent alone is not enough. You have to have the deep desire. It's more of a soul calling, how I could say it the best way, that lets you do the things even when they get hard. And that is the difference. And that divides people who are successful and those who are not. Maybe even if they are equally talented.
Yeah, I like how you define that with the passion and the drive, and with what you're saying about being talented, because the question I think always comes up when we're sitting around the table. Why didn't I think of that? Or why hasn't somebody done that? Or why isn't that being done yet? Or why hasn't that been invented? Or why don't we start this business? Or they have this great creative idea. And it's not that you don't have the right tools or the right people around you to be able to see these projects or ideas through. It's you probably don't have the drive or the passion to really push through the hard times of it all, because on the surface, it all looks easy and it all looks fun, and it probably is at the beginning. But then, as I'm sure you'll share with us in your acting journey, from the surface, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's part of our talent, it's part of our gift. And then you start learning, well, I have to memorize these lines and I have to be ready for a show tomorrow. And you did this for 10 years. Could you share with us a little bit more about this, or expand on this idea of talent being a wonderful gift and something that you might be passionate about and that you might have the drive to work through, and how there are many challenges along the way, and how do you overcome those?
Yeah, there are definitely a lot of challenges. And the biggest challenge for us performers is rejection, and deal with rejection, because there are, first of all, a lot of actors out there, and especially women, for smaller amount of roles available versus men. It's just what it is if you see all those traditional pieces. But what you said is so important. If your heart is not 100% there, if you are not having that desire, then when it gets hard, you will back up. And I can tell you that for sure, because there was another time in my life where I was already in business. I already lived in the United States, where I started to think, oh, I should do this quote unquote real estate stuff, right? And yeah, you can relate to it because that's your wheelhouse there. And I was listening to guys, oh, you should do this. This is so easy. And I own real estate where I had my studio, but it was more of a practical thing, right? And a little bit smart. But then going out to investing into real estate property and finding property to sell those and stuff like that. And I actually bought into a program. I invested quite a bit of money, um, a lot of money, and I got everything ready. But then the hard work started, right? That work where you actually had to go and talk to people about that subject. And I realized, oh wow, I really can't do that. My heart is not in there. And I had to make a tough decision. I didn't make a dime in that business. I didn't sell one property and I lost $40,000, right? But I had to cut my losses at one point. I had to say, you know what? This is not me. This is not me. I cannot do this. I felt terrible actually inside of me. And when I let go of that, uh, it was freeing, even though I had some losses there. But that doesn't matter. At the end, money is not the driving factor, at least not for me. And that it wasn't when I started my acting career. The matter of the fact is, people told me, "Don't do it, Sabine. You become a starving actor, right?" But here's the funny thing, Michael. I was working 2 years as a stage actress. And then I landed a role on TV. And we only filmed for 6 weeks over the summer. But during that time, I made more money than working the entire year as a claim adjuster. You know, when you do something that is fun and you enjoy and you work for it and you learn the skills and keep working, the money will follow. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Oh, yeah, and we're going to expand on that of following your passion. We're definitely going to speak about that, and I can feel that for you as a coach, that you are, of helping people with that, of when you're living inside of your passion, that's where the money will follow. I just want to take a step back here in this $40,000 loss, because again, many of those listening right now are entrepreneurs, are working in businesses right now. And a $40,000 loss can either offset their entire budget, their goal, and they can lose their job, or they can lose their company if they're a startup or a new entrepreneur. And so this is a big loss. And then, of course, from just a personal standpoint, a personal finances standpoint, again, another major loss in the home. If you're $40,000 in debt, you're not going to be able to take trips or buy certain things that you'd like to take. So this is a significant loss that can affect anybody listening in a number of ways. And so I want to kind of just go there for a moment in some of the thoughts that you had while experiencing it, the feelings that you might have had while experiencing it, and also what you did to get yourself out of that mental state. I understand that through acting and through your, finding your passion, you were able to help yourself financially. But that mental state, that drama that we put ourselves through mentally of putting so much value on money and goals, how were you able to climb out of that?
I would lie if I would say, oh, I didn't care. No, I mean, when you invest a sum of money and you didn't take advantage of everything that was presented to you, it hurts. And sometimes we even try to blame others for it, because that's kind of the human way of making sense of it. So I had to really dig deep and say, look, it's nobody's fault. You did it for many different reasons. one reason too was I thought I did it for another person, or also for the other person that would help the other person. And you never should make decisions for another person, only for yourself. And then I just had to deal with that one step at a time and letting go. And sometimes it's easy to say, oh, just let go of it. It's a process. It's a process that takes work and time of letting go. And then also being open to the new thing. Because when you release something, and that's oftentimes when I work with my clients, there's so much baggage, so many things they're holding on to that doesn't serve them any longer. Like I did, it didn't serve me any longer. And I had to make a tough decision to release it, and also telling myself, it's okay. This was your learning experience. That was your investment in life's university, how I say it. And it'll come back to you in many different ways. And when you let go of that, it sure does. Now I was open to do the other things I wanted to do.
So you mentioned part of the things that you did was some of the feelings that you experienced were blame and were regret, and you were really feeling this, and it was very painful in all of this. I like your take on this in terms of being open to new things. And the first step in being open to new things, as you mentioned here, is to take accountability for it all.
Yes.
I think that's one of the, if anybody's listening, the most important thing to take really from everything that we discuss ever is self-accountability. I've experienced financial hardship. I experienced a lot of other hardship as a business owner. And I think that when we start removing the blame from others and we start taking accountability for the decisions that we make, it makes what we're going to speak about next, the process of letting it go, a lot easier. It's not to say that other people don't have some sort of accountability in maybe the downfall of some sort of plan or idea. You can give them the accountability, you could acknowledge it, but when you take full accountability for your actions and your decision in it all, I'm hoping we can speak on this a little bit more freely. I feel like the pain and the hurt and the regret kind of dissipates when you take full accountability, because then you kind of look back at your thought process and you go, why did I make this decision? And it was because of X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, X, Y, and Z made sense at the time. X, Y, and Z was perfect at the time, right? Like the real estate market was perfect at the time. The insurance market was perfect at the time. Whatever it is that you were diving into, right? It was perfect at the time. So X, Y, and Z made sense. But for whatever reason, it didn't work out.
Right. And the thing is, when we take full responsibility for the circumstances that we put ourselves in, and sometimes, of course, there are outside circumstances that contribute to that, but we don't have control over those, but we always have control over our response. And when we take 100% responsibility and don't blame it on anybody else, guess what? The power goes back to us and we can fix it. And that is, once you realize that, wow, that is liberating. That really is. And that was for me. Now, from now on, sometimes, does thought of, well, if this would have been, or if he or she, I stop myself immediately and say, okay, it was not ought to be this way. Now let's move forward into a different direction. And that has served me so well.
And I believe, and I'd love for you to expand on this too, because I know it's true for me. It's almost like the deeper the pain, the deeper the regret, the deeper the loss or mistake, like the bigger, the greater the mistake, and all of those things I just mentioned, the greater the learning from it. It's the learning that comes out of it is tenfold, right?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And to 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 build on that a little bit is to just give us a perspective of what is money really in relation to your life experience. As you just mentioned, yeah, we learn from it. But there's another thing. And yeah, a lot of entrepreneurs listening here, right? And I'm always very open and transparent with my life. I have nothing to hide. And so there was also one time in my life that was a different incident, where I have had my business, my performing arts school, but there was, again, we are in transition. I was not focusing on the why I started this to begin with. I was focusing, okay, now I put on my entrepreneur, my business owner hat, and what do you do next? And you expand to another location. And I was a little bit disconnected from the business of teaching and coaching, which is my passion, as you noted before, to the business operation that, yeah, it was okay, but it was not really my passion. And then I did a couple not so good things and mistakes. And again, it was at the height of the real estate market. And then I found myself in a situation where all of a sudden we wanted to sell our business. Everything was ready. We wanted to do a cross-country trip with our RV. And so we had someone who was supposed to buy the studio. And the last minute, it fell through. A lot of mistakes on my side. As you said, we learned from it. But the downside was I had to step back, and everything, the house of cards fell apart. It was all in the same time, and the real estate market fell, and the second location was not ready yet. I mean, it was just a big mess. And we had to actually say, we have to go the bankruptcy route. We cannot sustain that. And we had to do a certain chapter. We still had our business, but we had to let go of stuff. And that was another very painful experience. That was even more painful, I can tell you that. But what came out of it and why I'm sharing that was, yes, we had to let go of our lake house. Because I was so I say in parentheses stupid, because I wasn't smart enough yet to make sure that all my assets are separate,
protected.
So yes, that's right. Anyways, but what I wanted to say with that, all of that led us to make a decision again. Shall we blame the economy? Shall we blame the person that didn't go through? Shall we blame? And I made a decision at that point. No, not at all. And I also made a decision to say, I wanted to step back from the studio. I wanted to travel. And we did. And then I was in Florida one day for a 5K run. And it was in April. I still remember that. And it was beautiful. We lived in Virginia and it was still cold there. So it was beautiful. And I was sitting down by the beach. And I thought to myself, I don't have my house anymore. We were in a temporary home. I could really go wherever I want to go. And then I saw the positive. Oh my gosh, I'm free. So that day we made a decision. Let's move here. That was St. Augustine, Florida. The next day we looked for an apartment or something. And I remember my husband and I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool to live downtown over, like in the district, over an art gallery? Because there were so many art galleries, right? It's all about the vision that you have. The next day, we started looking. So we went and we saw a house that didn't take dogs. We had 2 dogs at that time. So then we went the next day, and there was the same person who showed us the first house. And she said, there is an apartment free where I live. Maybe you can call the landlord. We did. So we called the landlord. We went there. Guess where it was? It was an apartment above an art gallery. And they took both dogs that we had. We signed the contract. And 1 week later, we were on our way with a U-Haul and our 2 dogs and all the possession that we had, moved to St. Augustine. And I tell you, that year where we had the least amount of money, that was one of the best times of our lives. We lived by the beach. We went there every single day. And we said, oh my God, people pay a lot of money to vacation here. We live here now. It was just liberating and beautiful.
I can feel your energy from that time. And I have several questions involved in it. I want to thank you also for your sharing of what happened with the art studio there and dealing with the bankruptcy and understanding that bankruptcy is something that is a tool that we can use. It's not a judgment on you or your business. And I say this not just to you, but also to everybody listening, is that I've had several bankruptcy experts come on the show before, and what I've learned is that bankruptcy is a tool. It's a strategy to be used in business and in your personal finances as well, if that's where it comes to. And it's not a judgment on you. Again, we go back to the mistakes that we might make. We make these mistakes because we're looking for other options. We're trying to follow a passion. And at the time, it makes sense to make these decisions. And unfortunately, sometimes these decisions backfire on us and aren't the right ones. In your case, as you just mentioned, part of it was you weren't paying attention to what was happening around you. You said you were expanding, but there were certain things that you weren't paying attention to. And so sometimes we don't have the awareness or we don't have the clarity to be able to pay attention. In the moment, I'm sure you thought you were paying attention, but when you look back and reflect on it, and I think that self-awareness of realizing to not place blame is very helpful. But I just want to just acknowledge that for everybody listening, is that there are different types of bankruptcies that you can file, and there's sometimes a restructuring or reorganizing of an organization, which it sounds like you did, or there are a complete shutdown of the organization. But all are to help benefit you in the sense of to start over, to have a clean slate. And that's wonderful that you were able to share that with everyone. The other thing that you mentioned in all of this, and where I want to go with this, is it's funny, as you said, we are free. I have my notes here, and I wrote down freedom before you said free, as we were free. And it's this feeling of, as you mentioned with the U-Haul and everything, that I'm no longer tied to this anymore. I'm no longer tied to this decision anymore. And this freedom comes from the removal of judgment. You're no longer judged to the decision. It's over. It's done with. The pain is gone, and now you can move on and be free. And so where I want to kind of take this conversation a little bit deeper is in the relationship, because you and I, we just spoke about decisions that we've made or that you've made in your past, of the real estate venture, of the studio, and we make these decisions. But for many out there, and yourself included and myself included, we have spouses, we have people that depend on us, we have people that are partners in our business. And so therefore we have relationships with these people. And I think something that is overlooked in your conversation here with me is the relationship that you kept with your husband, because now you speak about being in Florida and at the beach, and you had the time of your life and the excitement and the enjoyment. And so I'd like to just kind of just take that one step back before we get into the enjoyment of it all, and just speak to us a little bit about how your relationship was able to sustain this hardship through the bankruptcies and through the financial losses.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I also want to go about what you said, the restructuring, and that it's not a way of you being seen as failure. It is definitely a tool. And I also want to make sure that everybody understands, we small business owners, we entrepreneurs, we are the backbone of this country. We really built this, and we put a lot of our own money and of our own sweat into something. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And that's why we have those tools available so we can start. And as you mentioned, the restructuring was a big part of it, because relationships, I had teachers, I had staff that were relying on my business. So we kept the school, we kept the property in which the school were held, and we let go of everything else. So I have that responsibility there, and we worked with the bankruptcy courts, and everything is attached to it, to pay a certain amount and to keep that business going. That helped us pay the certain amount back to the debtors that we had in a manageable way. And so everybody listening, there is a way out. Just find the right person to talk with you. And then the second point, to your point, was first of all, I must say, my husband and I, we are now married for 33 years this year. We are celebrating 33 years. And we work together in the business. And we both have understandings. Everybody has their strength. And when we went through that together, I'm this free spirit. So, okay, that's the best way I can say that. And my husband is just the best that can be to support that free spirit. And it was interesting, before this all started, I had that feeling, there's something more. There's something more for me. There's something more in life. And again, listening to my soul, to that gut feeling that I had. And I told my husband before this all started to happen, said, you know what, where we lived at that time, Fredericksburg, that it seems to be too small for me. I think there's something more. We had a beautiful house and I loved it, but it felt almost too small. I knew there was something else. And you see, I put that out into the universe subconsciously. And so eventually it came to realization that I had to let go of that. And how did we both get through it as partners? It's so important that you have to respect each other and show love and have that love. It's work in progress. But here's one thing. If I can take you back to the last day that we stayed in our home. It was, of course, bittersweet. We had to let go of it. And we basically sold everything because we know we wanted to be more independent and we wanted to move and want to get rid of stuff. But the last day, we didn't have heat anymore. It was December. It was just before Christmas, December 23rd or so, 22nd. And we didn't have heat because the gas tank ran out. And of course, we didn't want to fill it up. And we had to clean everything up, so to give the key to the bank the next day. And the only thing that was left was a blow-up mattress. And that night, we stayed there. We cuddled together, including our 2 dogs that jumped on and kept us warm. But you know what? Yes, it was painful, but at the same time, I knew I had the most loving person in my life. I had my 2 canine children, my 2 dogs. And at that moment, I thought to myself, Michael, I could sleep under a bridge and would be happy because I have loved ones and a support system there with me. And when I made that decision, it felt so good and I was free.
I can I could feel that mattress with you. It's incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's when you speak about love and being loved and giving and receiving love, it's so true as we go back to the idea of money versus life experiences, in that you could have all the money in the world, and sure, we all wish for it. Like, don't get us wrong here, people. But without love or people who love you to share it with, it's meaningless. And I think we see that with celebrities and with famous people in the world, where they make decisions that we look at and we go, why would they do something like that? They have everything. The truth is they don't. They don't have everything. They don't have the love. And again, I always like to be conscious of those listening who might feel alone or might feel disconnected from family or loved ones, and just know that all you have to do is reach out to people in your network, or even right here, you could always reach out to me. I'm always happy to give some love. Is reach out to people and let them know. Be vulnerable with them. Share with them what you're looking for, and be compassionate to them. And what you seek, you will receive, as long as you give it as well. And sometimes you may not know that people love you, that are people around you that love you. All you got to do is just let them know that you love them, and I'm sure you'll find out very quickly.
Yes, and I wanted to add to that. I'm so glad that you said that, because somebody said, well, maybe I am not married, I don't have a relationship right now. But as you said, there are people around you. I had a very good friend who I went to and I cried, and it's okay. It's, even though when I'm sharing it now, I'm feeling good, but there were moments that I had to let go and I cried. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, because that's also a way for our body to release stress when we cry, right? It's a release mechanism. But as you said, there are always people. And even if it's an anonymous group you go to, or just go to church, if that is where you find your refuge, and pray to whoever you want to pray to, that gives you that peace. Mm-hmm. We can find it if you look for it and if you're open to receive.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know from my own personal experiences, as I said earlier, it's so true. When I look at I have my daughters and my wife, and of course I have an extended family of cousins, aunts, and uncles, and siblings, and my parents. But just looking at my family that I see every morning, and no matter what troubles I'm having throughout my day, or financially, or career, or business, I just, it's funny you mentioned the dogs, because I think of them like the children too, in that they don't know what's going on, and they're just happy. The blow-up mattress, the whatever you have, like for us it was old couches, they're just happy. They know a little bit different, but they don't care. They're just happy as long as they're receiving love from us, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely.
I didn't forget or lose sight of this, because now we talked about some of the pain and the different hardships, and we just spoke a little bit about the relationships and the love that's there. Something that you did mention early on that I'd like to kind of go through as a little bit of a step-by-step with everyone is there's a process. There is a process that we go through to let go of this pain, this regret, to start taking self-accountability. There is a process, and as you had mentioned earlier, and part of this process is to let go of it so that you could let new things in. And part of those new things was living in your passion. And when you do that, things open and expand by tenfold, as you mentioned. So let's talk a little bit about this process, and as you see it as you saw it play out for yourself, or as you see it play out for others.
Sure. So there's always a letting go or a transition process. No matter where you are, no matter how old you are, the first process, for example, when I left Germany, as I mentioned, I was a stage and TV actress there for 10 years. And then I met my husband on a European tour, Fiddler on the Roof, and we were directors for a company for a couple of years, but then we had to make a decision to settle down. So I had to let go of my home country. I bought a one-way ticket, and that was a transition, a big transition in my life, because I knew I wanted to build a business in the United States with my husband, where he is from. And so it was painful to let go of my family and my roots there, but it was also good to get to that newness and be open to receive something new. and the new family and the new opportunities. And that was, I guess, the second transition. And you have to go through that process of knowing what you want. And that's the first thing when I go talking about processes, when I talk with my clients and go through this. There is, first of all, a clarity process, being crystal clear with what you want to do and being crystal clear with what you do not longer want to do and have. And then I have a process that the church that I attended to, it was a process that we did at the end of the year. It's called the Burning Bowl. And sometimes when I do my life events, I do that because there is just something when you let go of something physical. So I have a meditation process that I go through where we can really go within. And when we go within and close our eyes and let go of that three-dimensional world that we live in that always distracts us in one way or another, we're a little bit closer to our soul's journey, how I call it. And when we are open and take the time to listen, we get answers. And the first part is, what do I not longer want? Who do I not longer want to be? And then you let it go. And as I mentioned, if I do that process, even we write it down and then let's burn it. It's kind of a, passage. And then we are ready to receive. Once you let go, you're ready to receive. That's just how it is. Yeah. Sometimes I give that example, when you have a closed fist, and you want to receive more. So if I take sand or money or whatever it is, new opportunities, and let it pour over your fist, it will just run by like the sand, right? We cannot get it. So what do we have to do? In order to be open, we have to let go of what's there, that there's no more space. So we open, let go of all things, and now we're open to receive. And so then I go through that next process of that receiving process, the clarity process. And once you have that and you feel good, we always anchor it with feeling, because these are connected. Our mind and our feelings, our body and our thoughts are connected. And when we have that feeling connected to what we want and to the thoughts that we want to bring into realization, we are more capable to do the things. And then we create the action plan to it. And of course, it's all backed up through my experience, through my building the business, to how I run the business now, so that it really also makes sense. It's not just wooey wooey, everything is backed up with actionable. I'm an actionable person. This is how it is. Maybe it's a German in me, I don't know. But everything is backed up with emotions. And that's where I also bring in my music, because music is a powerful tool to bring this all together.
I want to hear more about the music and how you bring it in, because that's amazing. I do want to touch on this wooey wooey thing. You call it wooey wooey. We say woo woo, and it's very interesting as I've learned more. I'm also a coach and work with leaders in a similar capacity to you. And I use meditation and visualization and tapping into our feelings. It's very interesting on how it's been maybe pushed aside as woo-woo type of stuff. But then as you start learning about neuroscience and you start learning about our bodies and how our body engages, how our gut and the nerves in our gut respond and speak to our brain, and how all of these emotions are tied to so many of the beliefs that we have today. And this is all, like I said, going into medical, into neuroscience and psychology of all of this. When you start learning that, it no longer is woo-woo type of stuff, because
Yes.
I think that the separation here that I want to maybe demystify for everyone is that it's it's maybe marketed as magic, and it's maybe marketed as things come out of thin air, but that's not the case. It's not magic. It feels like magic. Like when you talk about, I put out into the world that I want to have this house, and you describe it and everything, it feels like magic when it happens. But the reason why it actually happens is because you become more aware to it all. Your receptors are there to start listening to the things that will lead you to this beautiful house, that will lead you to this career, that will lead you to the man or woman or a person that you love or want to be with. It's that you start putting it out there and you start paying attention to these things. And the paying attention happens subconsciously. There's a lot of conscious paying attention, but there's a lot of subconscious paying attention that happens. It's the one that I remember hearing with Tony Robbins, and you and I can talk more about this and that, when he said, think of a blue car, and you start thinking of a blue car, and next thing you know, you go outside and all you see is blue cars. Why? Because you start becoming more aware of the blue car. It's as simple as that. It's not that there was more blue cars driving down the street. It's that you're more aware, and this is all backed by science. So it's no woo-woo, and I love that you brought that up. Before we get into the music, because oh my goodness, I cannot wait to get into the public speaking and the music. I'm telling you right now, you and I, we are one being, because between everything I just mentioned and your stories and my stories are so similar. And part of what I want to do with my public speaking and my keynotes is to start incorporating music, not from a play the music, although I'm going to start with that because I don't have any talents quite yet, but I want to be able to start playing the keyboard and the piano and incorporate it. So I can't wait to touch on that. But before we do that, I just want to talk about mental fortitude. And the reason why is I started adding things up with you as you started telling, as you've been sharing your stories with me. And, you talk about your experience with the business, and you talk about just up and leaving Virginia and going down to Florida. And it started adding up for me when you said you took a one-way ticket from Germany to the States. And in that, there's this pattern for you of being able to leave something that you love for something new. And you're speaking about that, about like the closed fist and opening the hand and leaving something that you love for something new, and the amount of mental fortitude it takes to be able to do something like that. And so my question, based off of all of that information that you shared with us, is where do you believe that derived from for you to be able to start making decisions like that?
This is an excellent question, actually. And I was, as you formulated that, I was thinking about it. Again, it's a process. When I was younger, this came just from a feeling, just from something within that I didn't 100% understood. But I always followed my feelings. That's the best way I can describe it. I followed my feelings that I had that felt right to go this way. I didn't have the understanding behind it. That started really when I started my spiritual awakening, so to speak. It started actually in Europe when I was in Vienna playing in Les Mis. I had an appointment for a massage therapist, right? And I just took it because somebody could go there. It's so funny that you said that. This just came back into my mind. And so I thought, okay, I want to have a massage. But that was a master. It was so much more. I mean, he opened up my meridians or whatever, and I had no understanding. But he was also getting into my mind in a positive way. And for me to open up many things. Some of the traumas came out. And then when we worked as a director, I was directing a show at one of the clubs that we were in, and there was a procedure called brain light. And that was over 30 years ago. That's when it started out. So you had your headphones with music, and you had the glasses with lights. And what it did, it slowed down the brain waves. And that goes back to this backed up science today, when our brain waves slowing down, when we get into this theta state, where we are not so conscious anymore and actually are open to receiving messages, right? For me, it was like, wow, that was the first really spiritual experience. And I tell you, people were coming up to me and I didn't know. And then that passes, right? So you have, again, it's a process. And then the next one really started when I had my studio in Virginia. I was 4 years. And then someone came into our doors wanting to rent studio space, and that was for a church. And I'm not going to share the story because this is actually a story that I'm sharing in my book. This is the book, Become Empowered, Echoes of Grace and Strength, Real Life Stories of Women's Transformation and Triumph. And my story is in there together with 12 others. But through that process, I started becoming a music minister and started my spiritual journey and awakening. And that's when I started writing music, because I understood that music helps you. I wanted to write the music to elevate the message of the reverend, because music is like, it goes to the back door of into your heart. Use the back door to go into your heart, because that connects the message that we receive on a, conscious level with a feeling that music brings you. And when you can marry that together, wow, magic starts to happen.
The music that you wrote, was any of it, you've performed it, I'm sure, and did you use it on CDs? Did you put it out there?
I did. And it's another magical journey if you just open to it. Actually, I was a music minister for 1 year, and I did a lot of musical theater pieces that are very inspiring. So it was a more modern church. And so one day, the message was the game of life. It was just the game, the last game in the NFL, right? Or something like that. And I said, I don't know what to sing, what to perform. And then I sat down on the piano. I'm not a good piano player, but I play piano for my singers to get them through the voice lessons. So I started playing, and then this music came into me. The game of life, just play it right. Put God first and see God's grace. And every challenge you face will turn out good, 'cause God is love and you will see its sweet reward. With God as partner, you win the game of life. It just showed up. And then the verse came, and then I called my reverend and said, Trisha, I have the right music. It's called the game of life, like your talk, right? And so she put it in the
pamphlet for the
pamphlet. Day. Thank you. And then I said, okay, I need to get my second verse. Guess what? Now my conscious mind and that human ego, now I have to get this all done. And nothing came. Saturday came along and I still had nothing. And I said, oh my gosh, I have to sing it tomorrow. What am I going to do? And I was there. And then I let go. I released the outcome. I said, God, you put this into my mind. However, now you better finish it, because I can't. So I sat down, watched some TV, commercials came. So, okay, turn it off, sent back on the piano. And there was the second verse, believe it or not. I'm not kidding. And that's how I started my journey as singer-songwriter, actually. And from that point on, it was like the flood doors were open and I was receiving and writing music.
It's incredible, right? When you step away from the work, sometimes how it can just come to you if you're open to it. So I think that that's the very important part to that, right? Is that you stepped away, you watched TV, but you were open. You had said you stepped away with the intention of, I need to let this go in order for it to come. And I think that that's so important because it's not the same as saying I'm done with this and I'm going to sit down and watch 2 hours of TV. It's I need to step away from it, and whatever can get my mind away from it, if it's TV, if it's a hike, whatever it is, then do it, right? I'm going to share a little bit of my story very briefly here on something that just came to me, which was just, I think, miraculous to some extent, right? Like, it's so cool. It's not yet because it just came to me yesterday. But I've had a long time thought process or idea of a network type of show for my podcast. I've shared it with other guests that I've had on that have kind of ins with networks, and I've shared it with people outside of the podcast. But for me, I've had this dream or this vision even before the podcast of having my own show. And I just don't know what it looks like exactly. I've kind of created it along the lines of the podcast, but that's never really expanded or really moved the needle for me in a way where I'm like, wow, this is the one I got to push forward on this, the passion and drive that we spoke about earlier. Recently, I had somebody in the studio. We were just talking, a close friend and mentee of mine, and I was telling him about the show because he's in the video production space. And he asked me, he goes, it was so funny because he is a mentee of mine in that he's a new entrepreneur. He's in his 20s. For those who know him, Rocky, he's a wonderful, I want to call him kid, but he's a man, right? He's a man. And I'm pitching him this idea because I said, Rocky, you're in production. I'm doing this. Let's do this together. Let's see what this looks like. And you're the perfect audience because it's your generation that I really want to impact with this. And he just said back to me, why would anybody watch this show? Why would they watch this show? And he's asking it to me out of curiosity, not out of judgment. He's asking out of curiosity. And I turn to him very quickly, like I always do, with all of my reasons why somebody would watch the show. But he planted the thought in my mind that, wait a second, this is no longer a 60-year-old veteran in the industry asking me the question or a 40-year-old entrepreneur asking me the question. This is a 20-year-old. This is the demographic that I want to reach asking me this question. And so I was thinking about it, but I left it alone. And yesterday, my wife and I, we celebrated our 11-year anniversary by going to a beautiful spa in our area in Rhinebeck. And I was there, and as always, as you know, there's no way that these things leave our minds. While I'm at the spa, while I'm in the sauna, in the steam room, all I'm thinking about, and intentionally, by the way, because for some reason as entrepreneurs, we're like, I can't just be here. I need to make sure that this is somewhat justified. This is neither wrong or right, everyone. So in the justification, I'm meditating on it. And it came to me of what I want to create and the show I want to create. And I started playing it out. So I'm there for probably 2 hours between the sauna, the steam room, and a cold plunge, and just going through the process and playing it all out in my mind of what it looks like. And I really, truly believe, I've put pen to paper with it too, actually, which I never did before. I actually truly believe that this show, if I can get the right people involved, can actually be the show that I've dreamed of. And it all came to me in that moment, very much like the music that you say. Now, I don't know where it'll go, but I just think that it's on the same kind of idea that you just mentioned.
Yeah. And it who cares at this point where it goes?
I love that.
It goes where it needs to go.
That's right.
And it will unfold. And it's so interesting that you said that. I started my podcast, Become, about 2 years ago. And it was so interesting. It was about this time of year where I was working with a colleague, and I was sharing my music, one of my songs called I Am. And she was like, oh, Sabine, you need to share this. Oh my, it touched me so much. And so we talked about it. And I said, yeah, it's very true. I haven't really done that after I left the church service and as a music minister. And then I woke up one night. It was 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And then the word become was just flushing before me. And so I wrote it down and said, yeah, I have to start a podcast. And the tagline of my podcast is, we have to become the person we are meant to be, to live the life we're destined to live. And when you are open, I had no idea where it would lead me. And I started interviewing. Again, I learned as I went along. But it turned out to be so beautiful. So many people, so many connections that I made. Look, we met here as well on the podcast space. But you know what? Then from that last year, because I had so many people who wanted to be on my show, I couldn't take them all. I said, how else can I, what other medium can I use to spread the stories that are so important to be heard? Because when we share those stories, people understand they are not alone. Other people have gone through it. And then they share how they overcame those challenging situations. And that's when Become Empowered, the book, came about. And I invited 12 other women to share their story. And these stories are amazing, all different topics, but all have something in common. It's that vulnerability. It's how they overcame that situation. And in some instances, found love. In some instances, really stepped into their purpose and now making a huge difference in other people's lives. And when you see that, when I started the book too, I didn't know how it turned out to be. But now, when first of all, the friendships they came about, but the stories that I read, it was so impactful, and it touched my heart. And I was able to help some of these women. They shared with me that it was a healing process for them to share the stories. So you never know where it would lead you, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's really, when you open up to all of this, it's incredible on what you said. And I also appreciate the fact that you said, even if it leads to nothing, you know, and obviously in the book's case, it led to something, which is wonderful. But it's so true, because at least you're going through these processes and being open to it all. Let's get into your public speaking, because you are a speaker. I'm a speaker, and I'm gonna tell you. Listen, we even have the same headset, by the way. For those watching on YouTube, like, we literally have the same headset. Like, we are connected.
I know.
Somehow or another. But you're also a Toastmaster. We talked about that earlier.
Yes,
you're a Toastmaster. You're a public speaker, and a keynoter. How do you, because, and again, this is, so I've been talking about my keynotes with coaches and saying, I want to turn it into a one-man show kind of thing. I don't want it to just be a keynote where I just go, here are my main points. I want to go up there and I want people to feel, to learn from it, of course, because that's why I'm there, is to give value, to inspire them, of course, because that's what a keynoter does, is we inspire, we motivate them to take action, and we give them actionable steps. Anybody in the keynoting space or the public speaking space understands that, right? And those who hire us. But also to entertain. And so many speakers are there and they miss out on the part of entertainment. And they're there, they give their 10 fast tips, they give you actionable steps, and half the audience is asleep and the other half is just like, okay, I'm going to go do those 10 steps, and so on. And this goes on so often. But what about, like you do, what if you could do everything we just talked about, of inspire, motivate, give actionable steps, and learn and give value, and entertain? And that's where music and the one-man show came to me, and you already do that. So I'd love if you could share with us how this journey, maybe began, and how you started incorporating music in your talks and doing it all. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's bring it to this part of the show.
Yes. So interesting. When I started my journey of personal growth and personal development and really learning a lot, I started writing my first inspirational song. So I wrote all those the spiritual songs were always very inspiring too. But the first one that I wrote that was outside of, it's still spiritual, but outside of the church, still for personal development. It actually started, I was getting those CDs back in those days. We started get CDs, and I heard one woman saying, living out loud. I want to live out loud. I want to change my life. I said, wow. And immediately I started writing a song. So I had again, the first verse and the chorus. And then I went to a convention in Rome. And I was a participant. And it was all about learning, how to, about personal growth. And then there was one speaker, and he gave us an assignment. And one of the assignment was, what do you want to do? What do you want to show? Or something like that. And so we were in this group, and I said, oh, I wanted to share my song, right? And they said, oh yeah, I should do it. So I did a little bit while we were there. And then we all came back, and then the speaker says, so who wants to share? And my hand went up. So, okay. So then they gave me the microphone. There were like 1,500 people in the auditorium, right? They gave me the microphone, and then I shared. I said, yeah, I listened to the CD, and I don't recall her name. She said, living out loud. And I actually wrote a song, and then I started singing, live your life out loud. So I started singing, and then I was done, and I got a standing ovation and everybody. And then that lady came to me. She said 2 rows before me, said, oh, this was me. Lisa Molina, I think was her name. I said, oh my gosh. And that started the process. And from that point on, I was writing songs that I then performed. While I was talking in front of churches, and I always connected my message with music. And that's when it started from there.
Mm. So you always connected your message with music. And it's interesting, you bring up the church, and regardless of everybody's faith here, I think that we have all seen a movie with a gospel singer in the background of some sort. So whether you've experienced it or not, the church uses song in order to help reinforce the stories or the parable or whatever it is that they're reinforcing, but uses it. And you could see it with kids. They're singing along, and adults, of course, are singing along. And there's a couple other things that happen. So
you just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ13. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ13 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
With song, and you know this as a teacher for public speaking, the question that I was taught, and I'm going to give a shout out here to Vin. I can't say his last name. He's a Vietnamese public speaking coach who's all over the YouTubes. You could see him there. But one of the examples, the great example that he uses is think of a book that you've read, right? Just think of any book that you've recently read, right? And let's just say that maybe it's one of your favorite books and you've read it more than once. Maybe you've read it countless times. Now recite to me an entire page from it. More often than not, nobody can, right? Sabine, can you? No, right?
Nope.
Right? More often than not, nobody can. Now, think of one of your favorite songs. Sing it back to me. More often than not, maybe you fudge a few words, but more often than not, you get the melody down, right? You're able to sing along with the melody. You're getting the song down. You're singing the song. And so what he talks about, and this is kind of what we're speaking to here, is that the melody, the music that is played is what's helping you retain the song, the words to it all. So when we
Yes.
think about messages and giving messages, why wouldn't we incorporate music and melody in our teaching? Which, of course, the churches and different religions have taken on, of like their singing and their humming and their hymns and all these different things. They've done that. So when we think about public speaking, wouldn't it make sense for a keynote, for a speech, for a talk to incorporate some of this melody? So I think it's brilliant from your end.
And the thing is, people don't remember everything that you said. The matter of the fact is, they remember words, they count 10%. But everything else they see and hear, they retain. And people don't remember what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel.
Yes, I was thinking about that. And I always mess up her name, Mayalu. Oh my goodness, Angeli Mayalu. Oh my goodness, she's gonna. I don't know her, but famous quote: "It's not what you say; it's how you make people feel."
Make people feel, yes.
And we'll come up with her name later. Everyone, sorry about that.
But I know many people have said that, So I don't know what the original.
But we go back to what we were talking about with the science, right? Where it's the feeling. When you feel what you want to experience is when it really becomes true to you. So going back to the public speaking here, it's the same thing of it's the feeling that you give to others and making them really feel good, and that's how they're going to retain the information. So you said you incorporate this in your talks now.
Yes, I do. And it all depends. Sometimes I start out with that. Sometimes I'm leaving with a song. So you know how powerful it is. The beginning and the end is the most impactful part of your talk, what people remember. And so that's oftentimes what I do. And the other thing is, talking about the feeling, when I give my presentations and my talks, one of the talks that I gave is really taking my acting experience, and I call it back to the future. If you want to achieve something in the future, you have to go back to the past. And I make this connection because oftentimes all of us have a situation in our lives that went very well, either in business, personal life, it doesn't matter. Something you succeeded. Wow. So I take my audience back to that time where they succeeded. They go back and they have this feeling, oh, great, yes. So what did you do? So they did this, right? And of course, when you work with entrepreneurs, they have, oh yeah, when I did this in my business was so good, so good, so good. And I got this achievement and this achievement. Now, what you want to do is take that same excitement and feeling and also knowing what you did and bring it to your future event. What do you want to achieve at that time? Then we go to the future and incorporate that feeling. And then I have like a visualization they go through where they actually feel they already achieved it. And you think and act like that. And one of my, the greatest examples that I always like to give, because from the entertainment industry, is Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, he is the poster child of achieving anything. I mean, from when he was just a bodybuilder, Mr. Universe, he had B movies, not had the thick accent. But when he was asked, what's next? Like a gym? You're building a gym? No, I want to be the greatest movie star in Hollywood. And guess what? He did. And the reporter asked him, well, how do you think you achieved that? Easy. Just the same as in bodybuilding. If I think I cannot lift another weight, I did it anyways. And I think and feel and act like I'm already the biggest movie star. Here you have it. You go back into the past, do and take what works, go to the future, have that feeling, and then you act and feel like you already have achieved it. So
And then he also became the governor of California.
Exactly, which reminds me, which is so funny. One of the movies, Sylvester Stallone and what's her name was in there, and again a futuristic, and so Sylvester Stallone came back. Yeah, Sandra Bullock to the future. He was thought out.
Yes, the Dread Cop.
No, Demolition Man.
Demolition
Man. That's right. And then he said, "Okay, yeah, we're going to the Arnold Schwarzenegger library." You mean the actor? Oh no, the president. Well, he wasn't born in the United States. And he said, "Oh, the people loved him so much that they changed the law." So I thought it was so hilarious. But yeah, the highest thing he can achieve at this point was governor. And he did. He did. He had this in his mind and he did. So we all have that same capability if we just step into our full power and full potential.
And I always like to draw the contrast because I think that most of us live in the contrast of this, in that it's not even an if. You are already. You have your own stories that you've told yourself of your past. You have your own feelings that have happened, traumas or dramas or things that have happened in your past. And they are the feelings that you're living as today. The person that you are today is based off of that past and that you've allowed to really, with no control over it, you've allowed it to form the person that you are today. So if you want to change that, and that's what you're speaking to here, all you got to do is tap into those other things. And I love your podcast of becoming the person, be the person that you want to become. It's so true. It really is. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's when I got my podcast here, and I want to move on from this, but very quickly, just for everybody to hear this. When I got my podcast here, I received a phone call from somebody that worked at iHeart, a very close friend of mine. She called me up. She said, "Hey, Michael, we're looking for local podcasters. Do you want to do a show?" I said, "Absolutely." It wasn't even a question. At the time, I was working at a big insurance company. And I said, "Absolutely." She said, "Great." She said, what kind of show do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know, but I'll call you back in half an hour." Now, I pulled out my company laptop because I still had to do some work and I'd have to call her back, but I pulled out my company laptop. Do you know what the password to my company laptop was? And I had no idea of it until looking back on it. My password that I had created was capital P podcast. That was the password to my corporate laptop. At the time, unconsciously, I didn't even think of it. It wasn't until about a year into this podcast of recording this show that we're on our third year of recording, that I realized, I looked back, I went, wait a second. I just remembered that my password used to be podcast. I had put it out there. I started really stepping into it. And so when the opportunity came of, "Michael, do you want to do a show?" I said, yes. I didn't know how. I didn't know what I was going to create. Mm-hmm. But I knew it was going to be a podcast. And I knew I was coming in this studio with, I don't know what, but I was going to start recording.
Yeah,
no doubt.
That's a great story. That's a great story. And it kind of brings the point home that subconsciously we have things going on. And sometimes it does not come to realization until a year, 2, or many years later.
Yeah, it's incredible on how it all works. And so if you're living in a state right now and you're saying, "Hey, I don't believe any of this stuff that they're saying to us, to me," well, just listen. The state that you're in right now was created for you. And what Sabine is offering you right here is you can create a whole new state. And all it is just take control of it. It's really, really incredible and powerful. It's something I've gone through with my coaches and I think is really wonderful. I want to just touch on a few things before we do start concluding some of this. One of the things that you do is you volunteer at the Humane Society or the Human Society, OUR, our, and it's to fight trafficking. And I'd love for you to just acknowledge them and just share briefly who they are, how people can help, and why you're involved and so deeply involved with this organization.
First of all, I love to give voices to the voices that cannot speak. And in this case, the Humane Society, there's so many animals and the dogs. Of course, I have my 2 dogs that are being neglected and they don't have a voice. So we have to give voices to them. And then our Underground Railroad is an organization that helps the fight against human trafficking. And again, most of them are women and children, and that breaks my heart so much, because I've worked with children so many years that are being put into this position, and we have to bring awareness to that. And oftentimes people think, oh, it's not us, it's in other countries, for example, right? No, a lot's happened here in the United States. And then I just want to say one thing is, why does that happen? The demand is there. And that's why it's going to happen. So we have to educate also the society about how can we bring that quote unquote demand down, because there's a total other thing that needs to be addressed. And so there's so many organizations out that do that. The Hour is really active in getting a trafficking ring, busted, but also once they take the victims, they have an after care, meaning those who are traumatized, those women and children are traumatized, and in some instances, young boys too, to bring them back into this
civilization.
Civilization, and heal the trauma that they went through. So that's why I'm passionate about, because I want to give people voices, because I believe all voices need to be heard, and in some instances we are the voices for those who don't have one.
And for everybody listening, Shamitria Gonzalez was on my show, and she was sex trafficked. She was a worker, and because of that, because she was sex trafficked, human trafficked. I might have misspoke, but they used her for that. She spoke openly about it, so I'm not saying anything. And you could listen to the episode and hear her story. But she was in Texas. She was a straight A student. So I want to just remove some myths or some misconceptions here of what these people look like or sound like. She was a young girl who lived in Texas, who was a straight A student and was working a job while going to school, and was picked up by this trafficker and the people that worked for him, who were also trafficked when they were younger. She was, I believe, 14 years old at the time, if I remember correctly. And she was brought into a home, a mansion, a beautiful home, and given things that she never had before, and made to believe that this could all be hers, and was then soon drugged and restricted and confined to a room, to where eventually was fearing for her life, to where she became trafficked. That's human trafficking. It's really that simple. It's not this whole thing that we see on television or in movies. It's really as simple as just planting a seed in a child and making them think they can have something, and playing like their friend, the wolf in sheep's clothing, playing as though you're their friend and protecting them and looking out for them and helping them, and bringing them in and giving them thoughts and ideas that somebody else is not maybe giving to them, or whatever it is. And unfortunately, that's what happened. And she shared on my show a story of a young 12-year-old who she was working with. So it really, it's the kids, and it happens to them. Thankfully for her, she was part of one of the people that brought down this sex trafficking ring that was happening in Texas, and this person that was doing it. And she even said, and it was even bigger than him, and they got him, and that's what they got. So this is happening, and I thank you for your work with Our, and of course the Humane Society. But it's happening, and I think it's something that we start seeing more now in social media with certain celebrities that are being, put out there. I don't want to speak on it anymore because I don't know the whole thing on it, but it's happening in front of our eyes. So it's really, really an important cause, and I'm glad you brought it up to speak on it. And bringing us back to a lighter thing, I just want to say one thing about non-for-profits and the work and the volunteerism. There's a reason why we volunteer in these spaces, right? Because there's a need. And we have to help these people. And that's why I bring this into the show, is that I want to make sure that we are all aware, there's all these wonderful things that we can do, and there's great prosperity that we can achieve. And that's why you're on here, Sabine, to help people find that prosperity, to find that beautiful life. And we also have to realize that there are people that aren't there yet, or that need our help, or animals that also need our help, and we have to be the voice for them. And that's why this is part of the show. And so I thank you for bringing that up. And so on this lighter note, I always like to know, what is it, when you put your feet on the ground in the morning, what is it that moves you forward? What's your mantra? And for you, it's, we have to become the person we are meant to be, to live the life we are destined to live. And we've talked a little bit about this, but please bring it home for us.
Yes. So what I do now is, and I had to learn that, but one of the things, when I understand things, how it works, it's so much easier. I start out with two things. Either I do my 30-minute walk. First thing I come out of bed, do my walk. And oftentimes I get the best ideas while I'm walking. And I got my exercise in, because that helps you get really your energy going. And then I sit down and I do my meditation. And sometimes I flip it if I feel like it, right? I wanted to start out with a meditation, but I do a half-hour meditation in the morning. And that is getting my body and spirit connected and aligned to be open to connect with the field, connect with that higher power, right? That is, and again, as you said, it's scientifically now proven, when we do that, things start to happen. And when I started doing this, oh my gosh, I started last year and then I left it again, right? You know how it is. We are humans, right? Oh, I have so much to do. But what gets me out of bed now that I feel things are starting to happen, people come to me, situations, opportunities, and it's beautiful to experience. But what gets me out of bed is that I can serve, I can be out there, like being on this podcast and this show, having this conversation with you, where I can share my wisdom that I accumulated over the years. I wish somebody had that done to me. I could listen to some. We didn't have podcasts back then, right? But that gets me out of bed and just being the best I can be and enjoying life, really.
Yes, I love it. Enjoying life. And you certainly have shown us the way to enjoy life, and you are the epitome of it. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Sabine, please pick up her book. She has a book that just came out. I'm sure you could find it in all sorts of different stores and all the different publications. And of course, the links will be attached to the show notes here. Please reach out to her for speaking engagements, for coaching. Sabine, for all of our audio listeners, if you could just share with everybody your website and different ways that people can communicate with you.
Absolutely. The best and easiest way is to just go to my website, SabineKvenberg.com/resources. And there you can have free downloads. You can see what the newest that is up there. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can also just go to talktosabine.com and schedule a time on my calendar.
Talktosabine.com. I like that. So much easier. Your last name is actually pretty easy. I didn't know that you do say the K. Kvenberg. It's
Kvenberg. Yeah, Kvenberg or Kvenberg.
It's actually pretty easy. I have a friend. His name is his last name is Knutson, and everybody used to say Knutson. And he said, no, the K. You actually say the K. I said, I love it. It's so much. It makes it so much easier.
Knudsen, it will be pronounced in German, Knudsen, because of the U, right?
Yes. Yes, Knudsen.
And you know what? The funny thing is, I'm the only Sabine Kvenberg in the United States, maybe even in the world. Literally. I'm the only one.
I believe you because I Googled you. So this has been wonderful getting to know you. And you and I have some work to do outside of the podcast because you are going to help me with my next keynote. I can't wait to add some music to it.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
We do the same. Thank you, Michael, for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Michael Esposito Show. For show notes, video clips, and more episodes, go to michaelespositoinc.com/podcast. Thank you again to our sponsor, Den10 Insurance Services, helping businesses get the right insurance for all their insurance needs. Visit den10.io to get a quote. That's DENTEN.io. And remember, when you buy an insurance policy from Den10, you're giving back on a global scale. This episode was produced by Uncle Mike at the iHeart Studios in Poughkeepsie. Special thanks to Lara Rodrian for the opportunity and my team at Michael Esposito Inc.